Hi, it's Penny here, and today I wanted to try and sort out my TBR shelves, or what I kind of think of as my working shelves. So most of the books on these shelves are my TBR, but also books that I've recently hauled, or basically any books that aren't necessarily going to be always here, but they're moving in and out as I read things, as I buy things, all that. But also, actually, my motivation for doing this is that I have some other shelves over there, and the idea of it was they would be more crafty, makeup, stationery, pretty things shelves, but they've also kind of become just messy shelves. But I have a mirror coming next week to go above those shelves, and I kind of wanted to tidy them up. But as part of that, I thought actually a lot of that stationery I would rather have over here, because you are sitting on my desk right now. So this is right by my desk. It's much more convenient to have stationery also on my working shelves. So if I sort out these TBR books, maybe we'll have room for that and I can clear off the other shelf. But also, as well as that shelf having become messy, you can see these shelves have also become messy. So firstly, we're going to start by taking off everything on here that isn't books, even though I'm probably going to put some of it back once we've sorted out the books. So firstly, let's do that. Okay, that's one step tidier, but still pretty messy. What I'm thinking about in terms of these three shelves is to try and put the ones on the top shelf that I really want to read this year, which we're at the point of this year now where I'm accepting that I'm not going to get to everything I was hoping to get this year. I'll put things on the second shelf that I don't mind getting to next year, and then maybe the bottom shelf will be more stationery and stuff, and the few books that I don't mind leaving for even longer than that, which I know there are at least a couple on here. So actually, on my top shelf here, we have the TBR books that I've had since before this year. Oh, and my Kindle. Where does my Kindle really belong? I guess on this shelf. To be honest, I hardly ever use my Kindle these days because I got a Kobo, which lets me get library ebooks, and I just find it really hard to justify buying digital books when the cost is often the same as buying a physical book. So I've mostly just been using it for my try a chapter videos and reading samples. I don't know, let's put it over here for now. Then I also had Unwind by Neil Shusterman. So this is a YA dystopian that a lot of people really love. And I did try the first chapter. I do really want to read this, but I just keep not getting to it. And I think both this and this I'm going to put off now till next year, just so I can focus on some other things, which I'll get to. So that would be the same for this, which is Mission Earth #1, The Invader's Plan by L. Ron Hubbard. So L. Ron Hubbard is the founder of Scientology, and this is his sci-fi series that he wrote. I actually thought I would hate this, but I tried the first chapter and it was really interesting. I really liked the writing style and the humor, which isn't what I expected. And I don't know if that's how the actual book will come off. But these, I'm going to put these aside, or I'm going to put these on the next year shelf, even though they'll be, let's put them in front of me for now. And then we'll put them on the shelf once we've cleared the shelf off. I also have these three books here. So these ones, my mum and my sister bought these for me as gifting a video concept. So they got these from the bargain bin at a local store and they gifted them for me, and I was going to read them as a video. However, I just really struggle with those kind of videos. It's hard to fit three books into a decent period of time where I feel like last time I did a video project where I read a bunch of books in a single vlog. It took me 8 months to film it. And so I've just struggled to kind of fit these in, but I'm not looking at what these books are, so that maybe I could refilm my opening reaction, because in all my moving and nonsense and my computer dying, I lost the footage of me originally opening these. But also at that point, this footage is 5 years old. So I want to restart this project and do something with it, but it's gonna be next year at this point. I need to take my cardigan off because this moving books around is too hot. Okay, next what I think I'm going to do is move all these books down the bottom here. So these were all books that I wanted to reread. I had this idea of rereading books that I've read 10 years ago, and there were a bunch that I wanted to definitely pick up this year and a bunch that I was happy to wait till next year. But basically all the ones I owned, I put on this shelf. Let's move those up to here because I actually want to prioritize my rereads for the end of the year, because I want to continue the idea of like every year rereading books I read 10 years ago. But if I let those always like spill over into the next year, it's going to get out of hand. So let's have a look at these books on the bottom shelf. So these ones, I've already read the first 2 books, or I'm about to start the second book in this quartet. So this is by a New Zealand author. It's like a fantasy series where the magic is all based around ghosts, but there's also a lot of like political conspiracy or like religious conspiracy. I did really enjoy the first book, even though these perhaps aren't as well written, or maybe it's the editing isn't that great, but still, I've started the series, and when I start a series, I try to finish a series. So these I will definitely be reading this year. Then I have the 2 books in the Legend of Nightfall series. Is that what the series is called? There's 2 books, The Legend of Nightfall and then The Return of Nightfall. So this is a fantasy series where the main character can like change his weight, but he's also a criminal. But in the first book, he gets convinced to like help with the raising of this young prince. As I said, it's been 10 years since I read this series, but I think I'd read it before that as well, and I did really like it. I would like to fit these ones in this year if I can. If I can't, I don't know if I'd spill it over to next year or not. Also, Fahrenheit 451. This is a really well-known book, like a classic. Oh wow, the text is tiny. Like it's a tiny book, but the text is tiny. It's kind of a dystopian where firefighters will burn books, and there's kind of like a death of intellectualism. It's been a while, 10 years since I read this. So this one I want to get to this year, and I think I should be able to do it. Then I have this, what is this trilogy called? The Curse Workers, I think. Yes, it says on the back. Books that say the series title on the book. Great. More series should do it. Not all of them do, which is shit. Anyway, this is a YA fantasy series where some people have magic abilities, but it requires touch. So our main character is from like this conman family, and they often will have like holes in their gloves so they can still do their magic without people thinking they can. So I do want to reread this. However, I think I remember looking, and this one I had read in 2016, so next year would be 10 years. So I think I might actually save this trilogy for next year. I guess I'm making the next year pile in front of myself for now. And I guess it's the same situation for, what is this series called? Midnight Texas by Charlene Harris. So this is kind of a spin-off of the Suki Stackhouse books. I don't think I would want to reread that series, but this series I kind of really liked. We're kind of following these ragtag group of characters in the small town of Midnight, Texas, as there's like different murder mysteries, but they're kind of like cozy murder mysteries. That's my memory of it. This one though, I think this series is the same kind of deal where I last read the last book in 2016, so I'm going to save it for next year's rereading. I mean, unless I magically end up with more reading time this year, but that seems unlikely. And then we have The Host. This, I did want to get to this year. I don't know if I'm going to like it. So this is like YA sci-fi by Stephenie Meyer, right? The author of Twilight. So this was very hyped at the time. There was a movie as well, and I kind of liked it, but I strongly suspect that my tastes have changed enough that maybe I wouldn't enjoy this. It did have some cool ideas though. It's kind of like the world's been taken over by aliens, and we're following this girl who's kind of like stuck in her mind while the alien drives her body around. Something like that. I've kind of forgotten. Anyway, I actually think I'm going to save this one for next year as well, because I think in 2016 I read The Chemist for the first time, which is also by Stephenie Meyer, and when I read it, I thought it had so much in common with The Host, even though it's more of a thriller. And so I kind of like to reread them both at the same-ish time so I could compare them. So let's save that for next year. And then we have We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Honestly, I don't even know if I want to reread this. So I'm going to put it on this year's reread list, and if I don't get to it, then I'll just put it back on my shelves somewhere and maybe even reconsider whether I should keep it on my shelves. Because this is like a YA mystery where we're following this girl who kind of has a lot of mental issues, and there's like a private island and some weird things going on the island. The first time I read it, the twist shocked me, but 10 years ago, I was a very different reader, so I don't know, especially already knowing the twist, how I would go with this on a reread. So let's put it on this shelf But if I don't get to it, too bad. Okay, I put this in height order because I always think that looks nicer. Also, this is probably going to fall over really easily, but with my mirror coming, I did also buy some more bookends, so that will help to keep this tidy. So next, actually on this shelf, there are 3 books that don't really fit in the TBR category, which is these 3 books. These are my books that I've hauled in this quarter. I've been doing quarterly hauls, and so I put the books I buy on the shelf until it's time to do that. So maybe we'll put them on this shelf for now. I won't tell you about those ones because it will spoil my quarterly haul, even though it's a long way away at this point. Okay, so then a lot of these books are books that I hauled through the year, except some on that end. And I've just been kind of keeping them here if I hadn't read them or I wanted to reread them, but I think I need to rethink that a bit. These books are all from the Dragon Prince series or the sequel, the Dragon Star series. So these I do want to read, but I don't own the first book. So these we're going to put down on this bottom shelf because also that is a longer series and kind of like a fantasy romance series. So one, I'm not really sure how well that fantasy romance thing would work for me. But also, it's quite a long series of like thick books. So if I was going to read it, like I feel for those kind of series where they're like older series that are really long, I kind of want to limit myself to like 1 a year. So next year it's going to be Saga of the Exiles and the Galactic Maloo by Julian May. And then I think the following year it might be this one. We'll get to that. So these I probably won't get to for a long time. So we'll just put them down there so I know they're in my TBR. I don't forget about them, but also they're kind of out of the way and like separate. This one I probably should try to read this year since it's really short. It's like a little book I got from a book fair, basically just going through all the different logical fallacies with like a little comic to match it. So we'll put that on the top shelf over here. Then we have Full Fathom 5 by Max Gladstone. This I don't really know much about other than it's sci-fi written by one of the authors of This Is How You Lose the Time War. Also, I think it's like the 3rd in a series in publication order, but I did find a reading order suggestion that said you could start with this one. Actually, I also really need to take this plastic off to try and make it prettier. So this, if I could get to this year, I would, but I think for now, it's probably more realistic to put it in the next year. And maybe the same for Flowers for Algernon. So this is a well-known series about this guy who like takes these drugs to improve his IQ and about kind of like how, not only how it changes him, but how it changes the way other people treat him, I think. Apparently a very sad book. Do I want a sad book right now? You know, I don't usually read seasonally, but I don't think sad books fit with summer reading. So for now, I'm going to put this in the next year thing. But if I pull anything forward, well, I was going to say if I pull anything forward, it would be one of these two, but actually Unwind and The Invader's Plan at the bottom of the stack. I have owned those books longer, so if I was going to prioritize anything, I should prioritize those, which I'm not going to, so I think I'll just put all of those for next year. And that'll still be like a reasonable amount of TBR for next year. I also have this, The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. To be honest, I only picked this up because it was free and it's a New Zealand author. I do think it's kind of historical fiction, but maybe like a murder mystery? It is set in New Zealand, so it does increase the chances that I might like it, but it's also really long. Maybe I should see if I could get the audiobook of this. Maybe I could immersion read it. I think for now I'm going to put this on next year's list, but I probably wouldn't be sad if it took me even longer. Oh, and this one. So this is zum Morgenstern by Stephanie Meyer. So this is Twilight, but in German. So I got this at a book fair, and I did German in high school, but that's it. So my German is not great. But I have started doing German on Duolingo again, and I kind of have this fantasy that I would be able to read this at some point. But I will admit, the other day, I read the first sentence of this and I thought, almost, but not quite. I think, to be honest with myself, I have to put this down on the like, not even next year. I need to practice my German a lot more before I'll be ready to read that. Then we have The Soprano Sorceress by Ali Modesitt Jr. So this is a series that I have read before, and I would like to reread the series. But I think it's one of these series where it's older, it's thicker, it's longer, so I would probably just be putting it in that like one a year list. But also, since I've already read this, I think I'm just going to put it on my normal shelves, and when we get to this, we'll get to it. I'm not going to keep it on my TBR because it could be ages, and I don't think it's that helpful. Like, I think keeping it on the TBR shelf is a distraction. I don't know where that's going to fit on my other shelves, but that's a problem outside of this video. Then we have Pegasus in Flight by Anne McCaffrey. So this is a book in a series where I don't own all the books yet. So I can't really commit to reading it next year because I don't even know if I can get the other books like from the library or anything. And I don't know much about the series either, other than it's like sci-fi with psychic abilities. But also I think this is connected to the Damia series, whatever that series is called. I have the books over there, but I can't quite read it. And funnily enough, I have that series over there, including the final book, which I haven't read, but I want to keep that with the series. So we better keep this over here to remind myself that I'm trying to find these and that I do want to reread those books and these books. But we're not committing to it for this year or next year, so it'll go on this bottom shelf. Then we have 2 copies of The Bone Season. I haven't even read The Bone Season, but I bought this a while ago because I wanted to read it, even though I'm not sure I'm going to love it. I have read The Priory of the Orange Tree and A Day of Fallen Night, and I like some things about them, but hated other things about them, including the writing and the structure, which doesn't bode well for this series. But I also came across this new version of The Bone Season. So basically, Samantha Shannon decided she's such a better writer now that she would rewrite it or re-edit it, re-revise it. And so I kind of wanted to do a project where I went through and looked at the differences in these two, but that's something that's going to take a bit of time. So when will I have that time? I don't know. And also, given that I don't know if I'm even going to like this, should I put in that time? I feel like it might make this more enjoyable to put in the time. Anyway, we're not going to get to that this year, but I think I might keep it for next year, because if I don't keep it on my radar for next year, I'm just never going to get around to it, probably. And then lastly here, we have 2 books in the Thomas Covenant series by Stephen Donaldson. So I have read the first 2 trilogies in the Thomas Covenant series, or the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Believer, I think it's called. So in that, we're following this man. He's kind of like this grumpy old man, not a very nice person, suffering from leprosy, so having a pretty bad life. But then he falls through this portal into this magical world where he's like the chosen one, but he refuses to believe it because he's convinced that it's a dream, and as a consequence does some really terrible things, but kind of also tries to redeem himself through the series. It's been a long time, so I want to reread the first 2 trilogies before I continue this last trilogy. I feel like it ended up being a quartet. I think this is the first book, so it probably doesn't know. And then I also have this novella set in the same world. But this is going to be one of these series where I'm going to need a whole year at it, maybe even longer, to be honest. So I'm not going to put it for next year. I'm definitely not going to put it for this year. I'm going to put it for some time later. Then I think the last books we have on these shelves is the Rampart Worlds trilogy by Julian May. So this is a sci-fi series that honestly I don't know much about. Even though I did read the first chapter, I've kind of forgotten, and I also don't know that it fully made it clear. But since I'm planning to read a big Julian May series next year anyway, I think this, like, it didn't end up that high in my try a chapter priority thing. So I think I won't put it for next year. I think the year after that. Okay, now let's put all these next year ones on this shelf in some kind of order. So I decided to kind of split this shelf. So on this side, I've got more project-y books. So kind of like rereading analysis projects, reread projects. And then this is just like my actual TBR books. So I think the next thing to try and do is put some of that stuff I took off in the beginning, like some of the stationery stuff, I think has to go back on here. I do think for now, I'm going to put some of these pen holders on these shelves, but I want to get some better pen holders, and maybe I'll put my most used stuff on my desk once I get a better pen holder, and then maybe I could put a lot of the rest of this in pencil cases and then just keep it either down the bottom or in some other cupboard. But for now, they're going on here, which is going to be somewhat ugly, but that's what we've got. Okay, so I've added pens and pencils and pen holders there. Then I also remembered I usually keep this camera and this mic when I'm not using them. I like to keep them here. I just like to have no clutter on my desk. It's quite cluttered at the moment, but that's partly because I took some things off here that I'm going to put somewhere else. But I try to keep my desk uncluttered, and I'd rather just, like, if something's on my desk, be able to put it back here if it's something I regularly use when I'm at my desk, if that makes sense. So I don't really know how well that's going to work if I have like more TBR books for the year or more book haul books, then this could get a bit squishy. At the moment, I've got Wishbee here as a bookend holding these two groups separately. I haven't got anywhere for Grumpy to go yet, but I'm sure he'll find a new home. I used to have him holding up the books, but he was always pretty grumpy about it, of course. Then down here, I've got some pencil cases and some multivitamins, which, again, if I have them at my desk, I'm more likely to take them. I do also have this like tarot card deck that I very rarely use, but I kind of used to like using it, so I kind of don't want to put it away where I'll forget about it, but also I couldn't quite work out where I would even want to put it here. Maybe I'll just put it down here for now. That's not very tidy, but most of the time no one ever sees this shelf except me, so it can kind of be my messiest one, but not too messy because, you know, having tidiness around you, I don't know, it feels nice, right? I'm not always the tidiest person, but I do think it feels nice. Anyway, that's my TBR shelves, slightly organized. Let me know if there's any books on my TBR that you would particularly like me to read, or anything you particularly love. Or also let me know, like, do you have a section of your shelves that's more like a working section? I used to have a TBR cart and I just found it always got messy and annoyed me, so I changed to shelves instead. Anyway, do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.